Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Describe TV. Again, we're going to talk about some hot topics today. First, we're going to look at how there's some news regarding artificial intelligence and how AI is affecting employment, affecting jobs, and how there's some powers that be that think we need more AI, supposedly to save jobs. Whether you agree with that or not, we'll find out. In addition, we're going to look at how EVs, electric vehicles, are now infiltrating the used car market. Up until recently, EVs were almost exclusively a new car purchase. Quite frankly, there wasn't that many that were out there that were used, but the used EV market is, well, let's just say this: there's some surprises there. In addition, we're going to take a look at the real estate market. There's some possibly for home buyers some light at the end of the tunnel, some good news coming where maybe in 2025 there'll be some um, easing of affordability in the housing market. And why is it that people think that? Is it not just an opinion? It's people putting together analysis and facts of what the market is looking like, it's what direction it's heading. And then we'll take a look at a subject that you may not think applies to you, but um, cyber attacks and cyber risk to your business, if you have a business or even your personal life, is lurking in the background, and what you can do to prevent that. So, first, we're going to jump right in and let's take a look at electric vehicles. Here's the thing: for many years, electric vehicles have been available as a new car. But used electric vehicles are now starting to become a little bit more accessible, only because electric vehicles have been out as produced vehicles for long enough where there's some um, used ones that are offered for sale. And because of that, the market is starting to, according to publication, surge. Used EV sales surge year over year in quarter two. Perhaps it's a lower price point, more options, but just a sliver of the used car market. Sales of pre-owned electric vehicles are making improvements. There were estimated 41,000 vehicles sold in the second quarter. Now, that may seem like a lot. It's about a 1% of the total used car sales, but up until recently, it was almost zero. So here's the question: what do you think about the idea of buying a used electric vehicle? Would you buy one? Is it worth saving some money over a new one? Do you want an electric vehicle at all? Do you want to stick with gas? What are the types of electric vehicles that are most common? Well, according to a large used car retailer, Carvana, which that's a whole nother subject by itself, these are the 10 best selling used EVs. Now, if you're going to buy a used EV, you want to make sure that you get it checked out, because the battery on a used electric vehicle is more than half the value of the vehicle. And if you were going to buy a used gasoline car, you would check out the engine, transmission, and those aren't even worth half the value of the vehicle. Look, a $30,000 used Toyota Camry, if the engine blows up, it might cost you $5,000 to fix the engine, right? That's, maybe 12 or 14% of the value. If the battery dies on an electric vehicle, $30,000 Tesla, the battery might cost 15,000. So you definitely want to make sure you get that checked out. So what does that mean for the models that are for sale? Well, right now, the 10 best selling models: Tesla 3, Nissan Leaf, BMW i3. That's a car that a lot of people like. That's a good crossover vehicle for people who have gasoline vehicles that are considering electric vehicles. That's a crossover where people will have that car. Now, for many car owners, their EV is their second vehicle. It's not their primary vehicle. You still have to have a car that can go long trips. Maybe you don't have to worry about charging. So a lot of times an electric vehicle is a second vehicle to the primary, but for the BMW i3, it's a big time crossover. Chevy Volt, we all know about. Two more Tesla models. The Volkswagen e-Golf, it's a little bit of a niche vehicle. but it's popular because of the design. Many people like the way that car looks. The Chevy Bolt, now this car had some issues with some risk of fire, allegedly. That's why it's farther down on the list. The Ford Mustang Mach-E, this is a car that I have to tell you, when it first came out, not being a big fan of wanting to get an EV, the style was kind of appealing. Now, I don't know what you think, but using the name Mustang on electric vehicle is a little bit of a sacrilege. That's a model name that goes back to the mid 1960s, 1964 and a half. It was a, iconic pony car, classic car, a muscle car in the late 60s, early 70s. You could call that a muscle car. The Boss 429, the 302 Mustang. These were big time performance cars. And then to make an electric vehicle out of it, some people didn't think that was, really appropriate for that car. But it's not a bad looking car. And Ford's having its own internal, I wouldn't call it problems, but their own internal dispute with dealers, because what they want dealers to do to continue to sell electric vehicles is to upgrade their facilities and spend over $1 million making their dealership eligible to sell EVs. And the dealer sued Ford, saying that that essentially makes our franchise worth less, so you're not allowed to do it. But they lost a lawsuit. The dealers did. So now the dealers have to upgrade. So let's look at some other finance issues. This is something that's a little bit of a lurking financial problem that maybe somebody needs to pay more attention to. The economy has a lot of pressure against it. One of those pressures is inflation. And the inflationary pressure is causing a lot of workers, a lot of employees, to basically raid their retirement savings. What does that mean? Well, if you have a 401k, a lot of people are pulling money out of their 401k so that they have money to live on. Is that a good thing? A lot of workers are robbing their future selves at an all-time high. 37% of workers have taken a loan, early withdrawal, or hardship from their 401k. This may be something that is an artificial propping up of the market that possibly is not being accounted for by economists. Between not having student loans have to be repaid, some of the pandemic moratoriums on rent, and also people raiding their retirement savings, this may be creating an artificial support level or enhancement to the economy that possibly isn't real. When people run out of money that they can pull out of their 401k, and people have to start paying their student loans, and people have to start paying rent, and maybe inflation is higher, that may be the thing that finally is the last straw, nail in the coffin for the economy. Who knows? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. We're going to go pretty quick. Let's talking about AI. Here's a little teaser from New York Times, of all places. Full speed ahead on AI. What? Full speed ahead on AI? What does that even mean? What they're making an argument for is we should dive right in to artificial intelligence because the economy needs it. Well, how's it going to benefit the economy? Before we get to the article, let's think about this for a minute. AI, artificial intelligence, is going to do the work of actual humans. It's going to do the work of people that get a paycheck. If you go full speed ahead on AI, now there's going to be less paycheck to go to people. How does it help the economy? Maybe it helps the economy because companies don't have to pay as much and they can make more money. Maybe it'll lower prices. Do you believe that? Do you think that'll happen? Do you think if companies have less payroll to spend, they're going to lower their prices? It's a rhetorical question, but what do you think? How does the economy benefit from AI? Well, let's see what the New York Times has to say. Well, first line, the workers were furious, believing that new mechanical looms threatened their jobs. This was back 500 years ago. Textile workers displaced by the version of AI back then, mechanical looms. But what they're saying is ChatGPT and other AI will actually benefit jobs. The AI has benefited employment while acknowledging the need for substantive guardrails. I'll leave those concerns to others. When it comes to the economy, the reassuring lessons of history, with a few warning signals, are inescapable. The problem is not that we have too much technology, we have too little. That's what they say at New York Times. Now, if this person's a reporter, I don't know what they would think if AI replaced them. And AI wrote this article, right? And they're going back to say, well, in history, we had other forms of artificial intelligence. We had the abacus, and that replaced mathematic calculation, saving time and reducing work. All right, maybe that's true, but 4,000 years ago, there was a lot of differences too. People didn't rely on their job to pay all of their necessities for cost of living. Most people grew their own food. They had a pig, they had a goat, they had a chicken, right? So employment they weren't living paycheck to paycheck in 4,000 years ago. All they're saying is examples from the past, 4,000 years ago, 1990, all these other examples where technology did not displace jobs. May be true. The highlighted section, AI is a must-have, not a just nice to have. We can only achieve lasting progress using technology, whether in the form of AI, is central to that objective. They acknowledge it's scary because it can be transformative, but it's just another step in progress. Our ancestors may have been startled, but the telephone didn't disrupt the economy. It benefited it, which may be true. They're saying go full speed ahead. The question is, we're looking backwards. We're looking at history. What about looking forward? Worker compensation has largely gone to corporate profits. Well, do you think AI is going to make that better or worse? Do we know? If AI proves as transformational, we could face a vast need for better education and training. That's probably another fact. But who's going to do the training? We already saw a couple of days ago where some colleges are using AI to teach students. A report from Goldman Sachs, now you're getting an opinion from a hedge fund, basically an investment company, concluded AI can help return our productivity to the growth rate. Well, productivity and income are two different things. If AI makes a company productive to make more widgets, does that put more money in the pockets of the workers, of the employee? I, for one, am fervently hoping that Goldman report proves correct and AI unleashes a new era of technological and economic progress. It says nothing about income, says nothing about jobs. They're hoping that you have technological and economic progress and hoping that we take steps to make sure the rewards are widely shared. Anybody have any opinions about if that's going to happen or not? You tell me. Now, we're going to take a quick break. We come back. We're going to talk about how AI is already taking over some jobs in a very high-end type of financial analysis. Happens to do with insurance and risk coverage and different types of cyber attacks. But this insurer is calling himself an AI-powered insurer. How many fewer jobs in that company exist versus a similar company doing something without AI? See you in about 30 seconds. right, here we go. So in this case, we're going to take a look at an insurance company called, of all things, Lemonade. I don't know what that has to do with insurance. Maybe it was the only domain name or website name that was available. And Lemonade is saying that they want to become a household name in insurance, and they're AI-powered insurer. The startup uses AI to power its offerings, which include a chatbot and specialized risk assessment model. The New York company is trying to become a well-known name in the insurance category, and they do mostly cyber insurance, but other types of commercial lines insurance, all using AI. The question is, first of all, is that going to be good for the company? If you don't have people looking at contracts, looking at policies, looking at maybe even underwriting the risk of a possible policy, is that going to be good? Are they going to lose money because they don't have the right kind of coverages? The second question gets back to what we talked about before. Does a company like this, using AI, need more or less employees to run the firm? Is this going to be counterproductive to the economy? What do you think? The good news is for cyber insurance is that the market is actually increasing. The rates are dropping because there are more offerings available. Cyber insurance rates dropped around 10%. So if you are a business or an individual that needs coverage for those kind of risks, you probably faced insurance rates doubling a couple years ago, but now they're starting to drop. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like a catch-22. One thing I can tell you about cyber attacks and cyber insurance is that will be a household name. Whether or not Lemonade or any other company is a household name, cyber insurance will be ubiquitous. Everybody's going to have it, just like everybody now has auto insurance, homeowners insurance, general liability insurance for companies. At some point, everybody's going to need to have cyber insurance because that will become the largest risk to a company, certainly, but also probably individuals too. So now let's jump to our last subject, which everybody wants to always know about, which is real estate. What's happening with real estate now and what's going to happen in the next couple of years? And is it ever going to be affordable? Will real estate ever be affordable? Well, right now, it looks like that home prices are still up there. And this is going against what people thought. Higher interest rates were expected to slow home buying and prompt sellers to drop prices. But here's the thing. Here's where the mistake was made in that logic. Slowing home buying and prompting sellers to drop prices are two different things. Higher interest rates, to some extent, did slow home buying. Just because there's fewer people that can afford to buy a house when the rate is 8% versus when it's 3%, right? If your mortgage payment on a $300,000 house is at 3%, let's say was $1,600, maybe $1,700 roughly. Now you fast forward 2 years later, 2023, your rate is 8% on that $300,000 house. It might be $2,400. There's some people that extra payment puts that house out of reach. However, that does not change whether or not the seller wants to sell it. Just because you can't afford it or a buyer can't afford it doesn't mean the seller wants to make up the difference for the buyer. They own that house. They live in that house. They enjoy the appreciation. Unless there's some serious need they have to sell that house, why are they going to drop the price? The interest rate doesn't affect them. The price going up or price going down doesn't change their monthly bills. That's their nest egg. That's their equity. If buyers are having a more difficult time buying houses, The sellers aren't necessarily going to make up for it by dropping their prices unless they have to sell for some reason. And that's where the problem comes in. Very few sellers actually have to sell. Most sellers have a very low interest rate, very low mortgage payment. Most people don't have to move because there's more work from home. There's not people with adjustable rate mortgages that bought 4 or 5 houses during the balloon of 2005. And upward price momentum is fueled by a dearth, meaning a lower amount of homes for sale. And this is what happens. Because of the fact there's less houses for sale, that means sellers are saying, at this price, I don't want to sell. Why would I want to sell? Remember, the sale event transaction needs both a buyer and a seller to come to an agreement. They both have to agree on the price. If the buyer doesn't like the price, they can walk away anytime they want, but the seller can too. A falling market, even if there's no buyers, if there's not one single buyer in the market, it doesn't matter for sellers if you don't want to sell, right? If a seller owns a house and he's living there and there's nobody who wants to buy it, who cares if you don't want to sell it? If you want to sell it, now you need a buyer. But what if you don't want to sell? Most people don't want to sell. With house prices so high, many people would buy a home or renting instead. Well, that also takes that house off the market, because if you're a home buyer that would have bought and now you're renting, now that landlord says, I'm going to keep the house because I have a good renter now. More people want to rent because there's no houses for sale. That's another reason houses don't come in the market. A lot of people think just automatically, well, rates go up, house price is going to come down. Has to happen automatically, like they're locked in step. Not necessarily. Housing's performance, meaning that the price is staying high, is a testimony to the strength of demographic-related demand. Baby boomers are aging in place. What does that mean? Where else would they age? Right? If you're a baby boomer and you're 50, 60, 70 years old, where are you going to age? You're going to go to a retirement home? Maybe. But unless you have to, what do you mean by in place? You know, I've seen articles where there's been blame put on home buyers. You need to sell your house and let, millennials or Gen Xers move in. Where are you going to live? Right? It's a catch-22. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. It's just that housing is like musical chairs. If there's not enough chairs to go around, somebody's going to be left standing up. What about the good news? Is there any good news? Morningstar, a very prominent financial publication, makes a bold call, and this kind of implies right here that it might not be certain. Housing market affordability be restored by 2025. Here's how. And what they talk about is the interest rate. They say there's 3 pillars to affordability. One is the selling price, one is income of the buyer, and one is interest rate. Well, it's unlikely that incomes are going to go up substantially. If anything, because we talked about AI before, right? There's going to be more pressure on employment from the employer side, meaning that employers are already saying, look, it's hard to find employees. Let's find automation. Let's find technology that can help us get the job done so we don't need more employees. Even at current wages, it's very difficult for a lot of companies to have a profit margin model that makes sense. So wages might go up a little bit, but they're not going to go up substantially to change affordability of house, how much you can afford. What about the pricing of homes? Well, we already saw that the inventory of available homes, not the inventory of homes, there's millions of houses out there, but which ones are going to become available? There's nothing in the near-term horizon, the pipeline, that says there's all of a sudden going to be 5 million houses that people want to sell. Right? That people live in right now, they just want to dump. Yeah, they're building new houses, but those are basically going to absorb the pent-up demand that's already there. So the supply of homes is not going to be changed that much. And even the houses that are for sale, people that are selling homes, they've spent 3 or 4 years with an expectation of prices at a certain level, and everything else is inflated: gas, food, cars, insurance, everything else is. So no one's going to start discounting houses because it's not really like an inventory that a company has where you have excess inventory. So the price isn't going to go anywhere. What about interest rates? Well, that's the one variable that can change. Federal Reserve can change rates, and that may affect mortgages. But really, to get affordability, this article is talking about getting rates back down to the 4 or 5% range. That's almost a 3 percentage point drop from where it is now. Not quite half. If it's at 7.5 or 7, you're dropping 3. It's just shy of half. Could rates fall that much? They could, but you got to remember, the Federal Reserve also uses interest rates to cool off inflation. So if inflation keeps going up, they can't cut rates too much because then it'll like light a fire, pour gasoline on inflation. So they have to like thread the needle to make sure that they don't drop rates too much where inflation gets out of hand. But then again, you don't want to raise rates too much where people can't buy houses. So Morningstar is saying that it's likely or possible that the Fed will reduce rates in a couple years, 2025, to where there might be affordability. Maybe, maybe not. But even a 2 or 3 percentage point drop, the way that house prices have gone up, will put it a little bit less extreme, but maybe not affordable. So that's an argument that the only way we'll find out is really what happens. We'll just have to pay attention to the market and see what happens. So a little bit later today, we'll have another live video that's going to talk about different types of conflict. We're going to talk about lawsuits, divorce, conflict with your neighbor, boss, coworker, spouse, disputes, how to resolve them, how to avoid them, how to do it without involving big-time legal expenses. Some of it's psychology. Some of it is emotional intelligence. Some of it is communication. Some of it is just flat-out strategy, being more clever. So look for that video. Watch our channel. Probably be in a couple hours. We'll have that. And that's a subject that is of interest to a great many people.
Are you tired of automated systems and chatbots when you need assistance? Experience actualhuman.com and connect with real professionals, not automation. At actualhuman.com, we bring you a network of professionals who are excited to answer your questions and provide guidance. Getting started is easy. Let us show you how. Here's how it works. Step 1. Select the best date and time for your video call. Step 2. Describe your situation and the areas you're looking for advice. Step 3. Connect one-on-one with an expert and get the undivided attention that you deserve. Experience the difference.